The camera pans over the bustling streets of Manila, children playing barefoot, vendors calling out, jeepneys honking. Amid the chaos, we find 12-year-old Arnel, singing softly beside his mother's small fruit stand. His clothes are worn, his feet bare, but his voice, pure magic. People stop. Phones record. One clip, Arnel singing, "You Raise Me Up," goes viral overnight. Within weeks, he's invited to America's Got Talent. For a boy who once sang for spare coins, the world has suddenly opened its stage. The morning sun rose over the crowded skyline of Manila, painting the city in golden hues as jeepneys rumbled through narrow streets. Arnel stood beside his mother's tiny fruit stand, watching planes soar far above the smog-covered horizon. For as long as he could remember, he dreamed of being on one of those planes, not as a passenger, but as someone the world would listen to. Today, that dream was coming true. His mother carefully folded a faded piece of paper, their flight ticket to America. "Anak," she said softly, her voice trembling, "your papa would be so proud." Arnel nodded, his eyes misty. He touched the small cross pendant hanging from his neck, the last thing his father had given him before he passed away in a flood years ago. "Your voice will take you farther than your feet ever could," his father once said. Those words had carried him through every sleepless night, every day he sang on sidewalks for spare coins. Now, standing in the airport for the first time, Arnel felt like he'd stepped into another world, bright lights, clean floors, people with suitcases bigger than his life's belongings. His mother held his hand tightly as they moved through security, both overwhelmed yet hopeful. On the plane, Arnel couldn't stop staring out the window. Below, the city he called home grew smaller and smaller until it was just a blur of memories. He whispered a quiet prayer. Then, unable to resist, he unzipped his backpack, pulled out his old guitar, cracked and taped together, and began humming softly. A flight attendant stopped, listening. Passengers nearby smiled. Even 30,000 feet above the ground, his voice carried the same warmth that once echoed through Manila's alleys. His mother watched him, tears brimming. "One day, the world will hear you, Anak," she said. He smiled shyly. "Mama, what if they don't like me?" She reached for his hand. "Then sing anyway. Because the world needs to feel what's in your heart." As clouds drifted past the window, Arnel took a deep breath. For the first time, he believed that maybe, just maybe, his father's words were true. He wasn't just chasing a dream anymore. He was flying toward it. The bright lights of the America's Got Talent stage shimmered beyond the heavy curtains, spilling onto the crowded backstage area. Arnel clutched his old guitar close to his chest, his small fingers trembling against the wood. Around him, other contestants rehearsed, dancers stretching, magicians practicing card tricks, singers humming warm-ups. But for Arnel, every sound faded into the background. All he could hear was the steady thump of his heartbeat. He'd never seen anything like this before, walls covered in glowing posters, cameras moving in every direction, producers whispering into headsets. It felt like another universe, one far from the narrow alleys of Cebu where he once sang for a few coins. His mother stood nearby, her hands clasped together, whispering prayers in Tagalog. A friendly stage assistant knelt beside Arnel and adjusted the microphone clip to his shirt. "Are you ready, buddy?" she asked with a kind smile. Arnel gave a nervous nod. "A little bit scared," he admitted softly. She smiled wider. "That's how you know it's important." He turned toward his mother, his voice shaking. "Mama, what if they laugh at me? What if I forget the words?" His mother cupped his cheeks and whispered, "Then sing from your heart. No one can laugh at that." Those words wrapped around him like a warm blanket. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered a short prayer, "For Papa." The announcer's voice boomed from the stage. "Next up, all the way from the Philippines, please welcome, Arnel Reyes." The audience erupted into polite applause as Arnel stepped forward. The spotlight hit him like sunlight breaking through clouds. He squinted, blinking at the sea of faces in front of him, thousands watching, cameras flashing, judges lined in a row. Simon Cowell leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Hello, young man. What's your name?" Arnell gripped his guitar tighter. "My name is Arnell, sir. I come from the Philippines." Simon nodded. "And what will you be singing for us today?" Arnell smiled nervously. "I will sing Bridge Over Troubled Water. For my papa." A hush fell over the theater. Simon gave a small nod. "Whenever you're ready." Arnell closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and strummed the first chord. His journey, from poverty to this very stage, was about to begin. The first strum of Arnell's guitar echoed softly through the theater. A hush fell across the audience, a silence so deep, it felt as if the entire world paused to listen. Under the blinding spotlight, the boy's small figure seemed fragile, almost lost on the vast AGT stage. But when his voice broke the silence, it was anything but small. He sang, "Bridge Over Troubled Water," his voice trembling at first, then soaring with power and purity that no one expected from a 12-year-old. Each note carried a story, of nights spent singing under streetlights, of hunger turned into hope, of love that never faded even through loss. His mother watched from backstage, tears spilling down her cheeks, her hand pressed over her heart as if she could feel every word. Simon Cowell leaned forward, his usually sharp expression softening. He didn't blink. Neither did the audience. When Arnell reached the chorus, something shifted. His voice cracked with emotion, raw, unfiltered, real. It was as if he wasn't just singing a song, he was living it. People in the crowd began to wipe their eyes. A woman in the front row clasped her hands to her chest, whispering, "Oh my God." As the final verse approached, the music swelled. Arnell lifted his head, his voice rising higher and higher, filling every corner of the hall with warmth and pain and beauty all at once. By the time he whispered the final, "like a bridge," his hands were shaking, and his lips trembled. Then, silence. For a moment, no one moved. No one even breathed. And then, suddenly, the theater exploded into applause. The judges stood. The crowd roared. Simon Cowell, still seated, stared at the boy, eyes glistening, lips pressed together. Then, without a word, he reached out and slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. Golden confetti burst from above, swirling through the lights like magic. Arnell froze, his guitar still in his hands, tears streaming down his face. His mother ran on stage, wrapping him in her arms. The crowd cheered louder. Simon stood and said, his voice breaking, "That wasn't just a song. That was a miracle." In that moment, a barefoot boy from the Philippines didn't just sing. He healed the world. Golden confetti rained from the ceiling like sunlight made solid. The air was thick with cheers, tears, and disbelief. Arnell stood frozen, his small body trembling as the glittering storm surrounded him. For a moment, he wasn't sure if this was real. The stage lights reflected off the falling gold, painting him in a glow that made him look almost ethereal, like a boy touched by something greater than himself. His mother ran onto the stage, pushing through the confetti. When she reached him, she threw her arms around his shoulders, her sobs mixing with his. They clung to each other, shaking from the weight of everything that had just happened, years of struggle, hunger, hope, and faith all colliding in one impossible moment. The audience watched in silence, moved beyond words. Simon Cowell, who had returned to his seat, stood again. His face was softer than anyone had ever seen it. He walked toward the boy and knelt down beside him, speaking into the microphone. "Arnell," he said quietly, "I've heard thousands of singers, but what you just did, that was more than talent. That was truth." The crowd erupted again, chanting the boy's name. "Arnell! Arnell! Arnell!" Arnell looked up, tears streaming down his face, and whispered, "Thank you." His voice cracked, and he could barely speak, but somehow the microphone caught every word. I sing, because I want people to feel hope. Even when life is hard. The judges clapped. One of them covered her mouth, fighting back tears. The host joined them on stage, placing a gentle hand on Arnell's shoulder. The world needed to hear you, he said. You've reminded everyone that no matter where you come from, your light can shine. In that golden moment, Arnell wasn't a poor boy from the streets of Cebu anymore. He was a symbol, of courage, of faith, of what happens when the world gives someone a chance. Cameras flashed. The audience rose to their feet once more. As the final notes of the background music faded, Arnell looked out over the sea of faces and whispered to his mother, "Papa was right. My voice took me farther than my feet ever could." The confetti kept falling. The dream had just begun. Weeks passed since that unforgettable night on America's Got Talent, but the echoes of Arnell's song still resonated across the world. Videos of his performance flooded the internet, millions of views, headlines that read, "The boy who moved Simon Cowell to tears," and messages pouring in from people in every corner of the globe. For the first time in his life, Arnell wasn't singing on a sidewalk for coins, he was singing on the world stage, and the world was listening. When Arnell and his mother returned to the Philippines, the same narrow streets that once overlooked them now erupted with cheers. Neighbors lined the alleys with banners, children held up makeshift guitars made from cardboard, and street vendors played his song through old speakers. To them, Arnell wasn't just a star, he was proof that someone from their world could shine beyond its limits. Despite the fame, Arnell remained humble. The first thing he did was visit the small chapel near their home, the one his father used to take him to. He placed his golden buzzer medal on the altar and whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. His mother stood beside him, tears in her eyes, knowing her husband would have been proud. Instead of moving to a bigger city or chasing celebrity life, Arnell chose something different. He used part of his prize money to rebuild his mother's fruit stand, repainting it and hanging a small sign that read, "Hope begins here." Then, he started something new, a small community music program for street children. Every afternoon, he'd teach them how to sing, how to dream, how to believe in something more. One day, a young boy with dusty feet approached him after class and asked, "Kuya Arnell, do you think I can be like you someday?" Arnell smiled gently, handing him his old, taped-up guitar. "You don't need to be like me," he said. "Just sing your truth. That's where magic begins." That night, as he stood on his rooftop looking at the stars, Arnell thought of his father's words again. "Your voice will take you farther than your feet ever could." He finally understood. His voice hadn't just changed his life, it had given hope to countless others who once thought they had none.